Are you ready to make the most of the only life you have? To make smart money choices focused on achieving what you care about most? Here to help you balance living well today without sacrificing your tomorrow is the Retirement Answer Man, Roger Whitney.
I received this email recently from a loyal Retirement Answer Man listener. Hey, Roger, I love your show, and I've heard all 194 podcasts, and I can't wait to read your book. But this lady and her husband that you've chosen for Retirement Plan Live are not a good choice unless your intent is to try to make us be more frugal. Don't get me wrong, she's super nice, but come on, that $2,000 a month budget on your show? That can't be right. She says $400 a month on food. How about $600 a week? And what about cars? Payment and insurance and maintenance at $800 a month? The number for vacations? It's a joke. What about repairs on the house or reserves for the house? So I love Wednesday due to your podcast, but $2,000 a month budget for a couple is not real. I mean, what's the issue? Social Security is more than what they need. So I received many more emails saying basically the same thing. And my response to them, as it is to this gentleman, is, your emails really make me smile. I let him know he's not the first one to mention it, and it's hard for me, Roger, to believe as well. And I push her a little bit, actually, on this episode on that number. As far as intent, my intent is definitely not to make anybody be frugal. In fact, I think I typically try to get you to dream bigger. So I have no intent from a lesson standpoint other than to let her story unfold and see where it leads. Prior to my chats with her for Retirement Plan Live, we didn't talk about her spending. I heard it literally when I was talking to her as well. I will say, though, one thing I like about this is even if the number is a little bit higher, there are some lessons to be learned in how they're choosing to live and what many of us think are needs that really are wants. Now, people like, quote unquote, us would be unwilling to make the choices that they've made, downsizing drastically, driving very, very modest cars, eating out once a week, really at a local diner. Now, that's not a judgment that what they're doing is wrong or right. I mean, I don't have the desire to make the kind of downsizing choices they've made, but they had the desire. Now, one big issue I do see with such a small number relative to probably how you and I envision living retirement is, do they really know they're spending? You better know you're spending. And I find in my practice that when we're coming out of our 50s and we're making the most money that we're ever making, most likely, and our kids are out of the house for the most part, that spending can really creep up. So we definitely need to pin those numbers down. And in her and Bruce's case, what happens to the plan if there are some big unexpected expenses is probably one of the bigger risks that we'll have to stress test for on the webinar. But I love your comments. I feel you. So today what we're going to do on the show is we're going to talk to Lori about retirement risks. And like I just mentioned, you'll hear us dive in a little bit more on that spending, but we can't do anything until what? That all important disclaimer. So we have the holidays coming up, which I love. I love the holidays. We've made a choice as a family that we're going to do Christmas big this year. Not necessarily monetary gifts, but we're going to decorate. We're going to make sure that we just feel the spirit of the holidays. One downside to the holidays, for me anyway, is I go to parties. I go to my wife's Christmas party. We have family, lots of family over. And when I'm at these Christmas functions and people find out or already know what I do, they're going to ask me the question. And the question can take a couple different forms. It can be, hey, Roger, where's the market going to go? What are the tax cuts going to look like? I'm thinking of retirement in 2 years. You think I'm going to be okay? Let me give you 2 minutes of monologue while we drink our skinny margaritas, and then you give me your answer. When people know what you do, I guess it's like being a doctor, right? Hey, can you look at this when you're at a Christmas party? No, I don't want to look at that. Just like the doctor doesn't want to look at that whatever, I can't really give advice to people that just randomly ask me about the markets or investing or retirement because I don't know anything about them. That makes total sense in that context. But for some reason, when it's a podcast or an article or some talking head on TV, we feel like they're giving us advice to us when they don't know anything about us. Like, I don't know anything about you. So I only give advice to clients where I have all the data and we're actually walking life together. So remember that this is helpful hints and education before you make any decisions. Talk to your legal advisor, your tax advisor, or your financial advisor, because that's just common sense, because they know you. Now let's get to the hot topic segment of the show. Well, in the news today, let's dive in a little bit more into what does an average retiree's budget actually look like? Since we're getting all these questions about Lori and Bruce's $24,000 a year spending budget, now that excludes healthcare, because we're going to add healthcare on top of that if you've been paying attention. But let's, since we see that and we're like, wow, that seems crazy low, let's explore what an average retirement budget looks like. And so I found an article on Motley Fool, and I'll put a link to it in Six Shot Saturday, that dives into that. And in the article, they quote the Bureau of Labor Statistics on what the average household expenditures for those 65 and older per month can be. So here, I'm going to give you some numbers. You don't need to write them down. I'll have them in the show notes. Housing on average is, I'm going to do some rounding too, by the way, is $1,300 a month. Transportation is about $575 a month. Healthcare is $480 a month. Food, about $459 a month. Entertainment, $200 a month. Cash distributions, that could be gifts or just random stuff, $190 a month. They have an other category of about $300 a month. And my math won't be exact because I've been rounding together on all this. It's about $3,500 a month for the average American couple. Now, in Lori and Bruce's case, if I were to back out healthcare, because I'm already accounting for that separate in the retirement plan live analysis, and I back out, I said housing was $1,300 a month. Let me back out $1,000 of that because their house is paid for. So they just have insurance and, real estate taxes. So let's back out $1,000 of that. If I back those two things out, that average budget of about $3,500 a month for an American couple aged 65 or older is about $2,000 a month, which is multiplied by 12, $24,000 a year. And I'll put a link to the article, and it lists this out, and it's all from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Now, I think part of the issue is, and I agree, because I know a good swath of who listens to this show from a demographic standpoint, is I know people that spend that a month on retirement or living expenses. So we're looking at average here. And although Lori and Bruce were in the corporate environment, they made choices to downsize significantly to live a very quiet life relative to probably how you want to live in retirement or how I want to live in retirement. So it doesn't mean we have to be like them, but I think it does provide us some lessons because it's something so unusual relative to how you and I think, most likely, at least from the emails I'm getting. And I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned there. It doesn't mean we have to go that direction, but it definitely can give us a broader perspective as we make choices to make everything work. So just as a quick example, and I'm going to not talk about one specific situation, but I've been in many interactions, whether in a flat fee planning environment back when I was doing that, or with clients where the numbers didn't work. And they had more assets than Lori and Bruce, but they also had built this cage of what they considered needs, the expensive house, the big car payments, the travel, the natural Starbucks and eating out all the time. And they had built this cage as they were making great money in their 50s that they really considered were basic needs. But in retirement, it was clear they didn't have the assets and the cash flow to support what they considered to be their basic needs, which meant that they had a couple choices. That cage of what they considered the basic needs, that minimum level of lifestyle that they had become accustomed to, that they weren't willing to adjust, literally became a cage. And the cage forced them to work longer, to take more risk, and to be more at risk in retirement if they weren't able to adjust their spending. That's why I think this gives us some pretty good perspective. Now, a lot of us don't ever have to make those choices, which is a true blessing. But I know many people that do need to make those choices, but they can't make those choices because they're confusing what a need and a want is. And literally, their choice is, well, I'll just work a lot longer and a lot harder, which is fine. That's a valid choice, but it also means that you give up potentially the time freedom and the margin to pursue a life more on your own terms because you've defined things as basic needs that may not be. No judgments here, but it is a negotiation. And if you say something is a deal breaker, giving up your lifestyle, there may be consequences if you don't have the assets or the resources to make the numbers work. I think it's an interesting perspective. Now, what we're going to do today is we are going to have more conversation with Lori, and we are going to dive into a little bit on the spending part, but also on what risks she sees and how they're choosing to deal with them. So let's get to that in the practical planning segment. Hey, welcome to the practical planning segment. We're going to continue this conversation with Lori right after this. So we are finishing our discussions with Lori on Lori and Bruce's retirement. We're going to talk about risks today and how they're dealing with them. The next thing we're going to do is the live, and this will be a live results webinar where we're going to have Lori and Bruce on. Bruce is going to join us, and we're going to walk through the analysis of the framework or roadmap we've been building for them and see if the numbers work. And then we're going to stress test against some of the most common risks that we all face in retirement. So this webinar is going to happen live on November 27th. So that is a Monday, November 27th at 7 o'clock Central Standard Time. And the only way you're going to get access to that is if you are signed up for 6 Shot Saturday, because that's where you're going to register for it. And we will have a replay available for those that are signed up for 6 Shot Saturday in the event you can't make it live with Lori and Bruce and I. So if you want access to this webinar to see the analysis and see a stress test live and see Lori and Bruce find out for the first time our analysis, because I'm not going to show them anything beforehand, go to rogerwhitney.com, click on the blog or the podcast, and sign up for 6 Shot Saturday so you can register for the live webinar. Now, between now and then, I would love to get your questions, your observations, your criticisms, whatever you got. Email them to me because we'll also have a show where all I'm going to do is address those, sort of like we did a little bit today, and answer the questions and talk about their situation so we can think about this creatively so we can all work to create a great retirement. So go ahead and do that. Go ahead and register for the webinar on Monday, the 27th of November. And now let's have that conversation about risk with Lori. Okay, Lori, welcome back.
Thank you.
So today we're going to dive into risk in terms of what some of the common threats to a retirement are and get some of your perception on how you're thinking of dealing with those. But before I do that, we have to address the elephant that is in everyone's room of how the heck you can have a retirement on $24,000 a year before healthcare and things like that. That's really freaking people out.
Well, I can imagine why.
So let me just read you a couple comments and let's just chat about it real quick. So one gentleman writes, on the surface, it seems implausible. How do you account for repairs, gifts, church, cell phones, TVs, computers, etc., etc., etc.? So how do you account for those things?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at my monthly costs right here. And, we have a healthy savings account. I think I mentioned last time that I got a pretty good package when I got laid off from my company, and we got an inheritance when my folks passed away. We have a lot of money in savings, and if we need to, we can dip into that.
And I guess one of the other comments I have gotten was, is that a real number, or are they not tracking their spending well enough? So do you track your spending? Are you one of those Quicken spreadsheet people that know exactly what you're spending every month?
Yes, we actually put everything that we can on our credit card, and then that goes into, I used to use Quicken, but I got tired of it. So now I use Mint, and I can track on that. but everything goes on the credit card. So I look at our credit card statement, and that's pretty much our expenses for the month, except for our church donations and any little other things. But that's pretty much it.
And that's including, so that 24,000 is going to include church donations.
Yeah, it does.
Okay. What about real estate taxes?
Yes, it includes that too.
Okay. So I know in my household, we always have these one-off things that pop up, but it seems like they're one-off things, but it seems like every month we have some different one-off thing that pops up, right? You know, whether it's, repairing the fence or repairing the car or something like that. How are you planning for that? I assume that's not in that 24,000 a year. How do you deal with life happening?
Well, that's kind of, like I said, we can dip into our savings when we need to. And so we do if there's something. But when we sold our house, we got a lot of money from that sale because our house appreciated in the time we had it. So we have used that for when we moved over here to fix things up. So, we've had that money as well to kind of fall back on.
Okay. Well, which implies that you are tapping savings. I guess, so that's the next question. How often have you seen that you tap that savings account for stuff, extra stuff?
Well, not too often, actually. I try to keep my business account pretty hefty. I've got about $6,000 that I keep in there. And so if I need extra, then I can take it from there. And then some months I have more extra things that I do. And so that kind of builds it back up again. But it just seems to all work out.
Okay. So, and you've been tracking this for a decent amount of time. Because I know some people, they guesstimate, and then when they really dial in their spending, it's a lot different than they thought. But it sounds like you are tracking it in Mint, you said, right?
Yeah, we do track it.
Okay. So let me just ask some random questions. Let me think about this. Do you have cell phones?
Yes.
How much does your cell phone bill? Do you know, roughly?
It's about, for both of us, $70 a month.
Okay. What about cable?
We don't have cable.
Internet?
We have internet. It's about $70 a month for that.
Okay. And then, so typically, what do you guys eat in the house? You cook mostly?
We cook. We only go out on Sundays. And then we spend, if we spend $25, then that's about, we don't spend a lot. We don't go out for big meals or, we just did take a little vacation and we spent some money there, but we had that planned. So in our groceries, we try to buy organic quite a bit. I try to.
Now, organic's more expensive though.
Well, but we have a Sprouts here that is very reasonable. And then I'm a big sale shopper. Going to the grocery store on Saturday mornings, I might go to 3 different stores and get things at different stores. So.
Okay. And when I heard it, I remember when you said it in that first conversation, I was like, really? And, we were talking, so I figured I'd come and revisit it. But then I got to thinking afterwards, and I'm not even challenging you on this. I'm just thinking out loud. But I got to thinking afterwards, most of us have these creature comforts in life that are quote unquote needs. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like a lot of those things that I would say is a creature comfort that I could not do without, you're like, it's not important to you at all. So a lot of it's a matter of choices, the way I've viewed it. Right.
Like there's one thing that is a creature comfort for me is my coffee. And so I don't buy Folgers coffee. We have a natural grocery store here and everything there is organic. And they have a $2, clearance bin. And I go in there and look at that. But every week they have something on sale. And I'll go there and get their organic coffee for, 16 ounces for $12, which is really good.
Yeah.
And it's good coffee. So there's some things that we have, and Bruce likes his nutraceutical products. And so we make room for that. And
Bruce has all these things that are words that I don't even know what they mean. He has the whole hydroponic-y whatever. And now you just use like nutraceutical. What'd you call it?
Hydroponics.
What was the other one? No,
aquaponics. And then I just said nutraceuticals, which are, healthy. It's food in a capsule form.
Okay. You're going to have to remember that it can only handle like up to maybe 2 or 3 syllables in any particular word. So this will pivot to the risk conversation of during the live webinar when we're looking at the results, we're definitely going to have to test what happens if spending is over budget. The term I'm going to use is bare bones, but there's not a lot of fluff in your monthly spending, which can cause you're going to be more apt to inflation because you've already made a lot of the adjustments people will make when prices go up. So we'll just have to make sure that we test for periods of time when spending goes up unexpectedly just to see the impact of the overall plan. But I like this because I think you've made, you talked about how you used to live in the 4,000 square foot house and things like that. You've really adjusted your lifestyle to suit what you and Bruce envision, which I think is really cool.
Right.
Okay, I'll get off of that now. It's just, I want to get more flavor to it because people are curious and I think it's great. Now, let's talk about some of the risks. In our last conversation, you have a decent amount in cash that you sort of need to decide how much you should have, where it's not too hot or too cold. But put the cash to the side. Tell me about your experiences investing and how you typically invest from in your IRA and things like that.
Well, mainly, I've just kind of been shifting into more ETFs. So I had been in individual stocks, but in my readings over the past year or so, I've been reading more about getting more, structured or, asset allocation models and conservative and versus moderate versus aggressive. And I finally come to realize that, we need to kind of apportion our money into different pots. So one being the cash and bond kind of, and then one being, safer type investments, and then one to grow for maybe the next 20 years or so. So I've been gradually kind of shifting into more robo investing format, ETF kind of thing rather than individual stocks. But I had been more of an individual stock.
Okay. And then what, if you had to say, not looking at the cash, what your allocation has been between, say, stocks and bonds, where would you put that right now?
Right now?
Yes.
There's still way too much in stock.
So what does that mean?
I would,
70?
It's probably 80-20 right now.
80-20, okay.
Because we're just gradually kind of deciding, hey, it's time to think about getting our money into these pots because we're ready for retirement or very soon. So it's still way too much in stocks and way too much in cash too.
Yeah, you're
even in my IRA, the one with the most money in it, there's a lot of that's just cash. It's just not invested.
But about 80% of it. So outside the cash, so let me rephrase then. Outside the cash that's in the taxable account, if we were just to look at your IRA, what percentage is cash and bonds and what percentage do you think are equities, whether it's in mutual funds or ETFs or whatever?
Just in the IRA?
Yeah, just your larger IRA.
Oh, the only thing in there is either equities or cash. And it's probably 50-50 right now.
Okay, so it's about 50-50. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, talk to me, go back to like 2008. Remember that?
Yeah, that was a bad time.
So roughly, were you pretty aggressive going into all that equity-wise?
Oh, yeah. 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 So we took a big hit, but I didn't sell anything. I just, left it there and it, did recover.
Okay. Okay. So you didn't panic and you didn't change anything going through that, trying to protect that. So you said, just going to ride it out.
Yep. That's what I did. Yeah. That's what people said to do. And so that's what we did.
Didn't lose any sleep or anything like that?
Oh, it was not fun. I probably lost some sleep.
I remember the commercial. I forget who it was that had the commercial where it was a mailman and he was chasing down a guy and the guy was like jumping over fences trying to get away from the mailman because the mailman was trying to deliver his investment statement.
Yeah, the poor guy didn't know. That's better than having to look at it online.
Yeah, where you can do it every refresh.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll look at various asset allocations, so maybe we'll be able to, give you some guidance there when we're on the live webinar. Let's talk about one of the other big risks, and this is maybe a bigger risk for you guys, just because of how lean your spending is relative to most people, is inflation, right? So since 1970, CPI has averaged about 4%. Your spending tends to be on the basics and, the necessities and not the luxuries of, staying at the fanciest hotels and eating at the great restaurants all the time. So inflation will probably hit you a lot harder if it spikes. So what are your thoughts on how to deal with that?
Well, I haven't really had that many thoughts on that. I'd probably have to talk to, some investment advisor and see what they have to say. So, okay. I realize it's there, right? In the past few years, inflation has not been that much per year. So it's, but prices gradually creep up.
Yeah, they do. And so as an example, and let me pull this up right here. So that 24,000 that we're talking about today, if we go out, because we're talking about the two of you living into your early 90s, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we go out to say 2047, that 24,000 a year after tax money is really like 78,000 if you adjust for inflation. Now we're just using a constant 4%. And hopefully, Social Security, and you mentioned that last time, has some inflation adjustment to it. And then investment portfolio, depending on your investment, can be a good hedge against that. But so we'll have to target what happens if inflation spikes to the plan. Well, again, we'll do that on the webinar just so we can get some more depth to how that might hit you. Another issue is, maybe more so for you guys than most as well, is premature death. Other than the fact that someone dies, from a financial standpoint, it can have an impact, right? Because you're going to lose some Social Security.
Right.
And you're going to lose, if it's during the time of pre-retirement work, whether it's you or Bruce. So do you currently have life insurance or something to protect against that from a financial standpoint?
Yeah, we both have about $300,000 policies.
Okay. And are those just term policies?
They're term.
Okay. So when do the payments change?
It's around the corner for Bruce. I think it's in 2019. And for me, I think it's a few years after that.
Okay. So you get a little bit. So that's going to be a decision point to get an idea. Because in retirement, a lot of times the question becomes, do I need insurance anymore? Right?
Right.
Because usually we buy insurance when we get mortgages and we have kids and, there's going to be a huge impact. So the question a lot of times becomes, and you're a perfect example of this, we buy term policies and then the year when that fixed payment is ending and now it readjusts to your current age and your current health, it can be a shocker.
Mm-hmm. I've looked at it. Yeah, we won't be continuing that policy.
Yeah.
Those policies. Yeah.
So we'll have to see. Again, this is why you have to stress test against all these types of things just to see the impact. And hopefully this will be helpful for you when we do that on the live webinar of, okay, if there's no insurance and Lori happens to die early, this is how Bruce will do, based on the analysis. And we'll look at that because that's something that will be important. Now, another one that's going to be important for you guys and everybody is healthcare risk, right? Mm-hmm. What happens with, let's just go to the biggie right up top of what happens if someone has to go into a long-term care facility. Have you guys given much thought to that type of risk and what you do about it?
Not a lot of serious thought. No, we talk about putting each other away, but not really. We haven't.
Did you say putting each other down or putting each other away?
Putting each other away.
Okay.
In a home, who's going to go to the home first,
right.
That kind of thing. But no, we really haven't. I mean, I know there's that long-term health insurance out there and I've read a little bit about it, but we really haven't discussed it.
Okay. Is that just because it feels so far away or it's so confusing? Why haven't you discussed it?
It does feel far away in a way. I don't think that's something Bruce would want to do or to invest in. I don't know. We just really haven't. We've talked about it in relation to his folks because they are both now in a long-term care, but we haven't really talked about it for ourselves.
Now, do you have any idea, and just a round number, of what they pay to be in their long-term care facility?
Yeah, it's $12,000 a month.
Okay. How long have they been in a facility like that?
For a year now.
For a year now. Any idea of how long they might be in a facility like that?
We really don't know. They're both declining. We don't know.
Okay. Is it an
Maybe
Alzheimer's?
Another year or two.
Okay. So it's not an Alzheimer's issue. It's really just being able to function. His dad
kind of he's been going into more dementia, and his mom is, I don't know. Some days she sounds really sharp, and then some days she forgets a lot of stuff. Okay. So there are different levels, but they're both in their late 80s. So you wouldn't think they would, hang on all that long. We don't know.
Yeah, my grandmother was in a facility. It was more of assisted living than long-term care for about 8 to 10 years. She died when she was 96. I'm trying to remember now. And the question there, the big risk there from a planning perspective is, where do you get the money to pay for it? Mm-hmm. Right? That's the hard part with insurance is it's super expensive unless you need it.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And if we only knew. And so I'm just thinking out loud, but by not doing an evaluation on it, it's sort of defaulting to a decision of not to do it, which may be the right decision, but without really knowing whether it is or not. And everybody has a different view on that. So it sounds like yours right now is we know it's out there, but we don't really, just not going to deal with it. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll test against that. Any other risks that you think about when you look forward?
Oh, just some kind of accident or something, a big health issue or that we don't think is going to happen. That's about it.
Okay. Yeah, especially while you're working too. But here's a question for you. What's plan B if we hit a perfect storm and you run out of money and all you have is Social Security in your house? How is that going to work?
Guess it'd be pretty bad. So you're saying we'd lose all of our investment money?
Well, right now, Social Security would cover what you're spending, right? Other than some of the wants and wishes. So in your case, you're already pretty lean, so you could live off of Social Security maybe with supplemental. So you're probably a lot better off in that situation than most. I'm just curious if you worry about that.
Not too much. I mean, we could downsize again. We don't have to live in this big of a house. But then I don't know how much that would really buy us because our expenses are really low just living right here. So I don't know.
Okay. So worrying about a big health issue makes sense. Anything else that you worry about? Or worry sounds like you're losing any sleep over it, but just things that you're concerned about when you look forward.
No, maybe I should worry more.
No, I'm not saying that, but no, it's always a hard discussion, right? No, I'm not saying that. I'm just curious, just trying to get insight into who you are. Now, tell me about, I'm going to pivot a little bit here from the financial risks, tell me about your network of friends. Do you have a lot of friends, you and Bruce?
Well, we have a lot of friends here. We've lived here a long time, but it seems like we haven't done a whole lot with them. And we see them in Bible class and church and things like that. But I'd like to do more with them, outside of church activities and things like that. I think it'd be better if we would, take more initiative on that part to do more things with our friends.
Yeah, I'm 50, and I think about that a lot because I have friends. I have a lot of friends, sort of like you, because we saw each other at FinCon.
Right.
Briefly, because I was running all around like a crazy man. And I think I had a lot of friends there, but we don't, almost all of my friends don't live in the same state as I live in. So it's not like going to play a board game friends. Right. And you probably have a lot more friends or social connections than you think of just through your virtual work and going to things like FinCon and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. Yep. With mine, more WordCamp, WordPress, WordCamps, things like that. I know a lot of people through there, and a lot of them are virtual. But, most of my lifelong friends, we've lived here most of our lives. So really our lifelong friends that we know are here. And I think it'd be good to invest more in those relationships than we have in the past.
Okay. So we are coming up on the live webinar. Are you excited about that?
Yeah, I'd like to see what you're coming up with.
Okay. Well, we'll come up with something and we'll test against all of these risks that we talked about just to stress test it to see, okay, how does it impact it? That way, maybe you'll have a little bit more color as to whether it's okay to punt on it or to, wow, maybe I should address that one a little bit more than I have. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited for that. And you have been awesome. So next time we're going to talk is going to be on that webinar, and you're going to be live with everybody else. They won't be talking, only you and I will be. And maybe then we'll actually have some text questions we can answer together. So that'll be fun.
Okay, that sounds good. I appreciate your time.
Hey, welcome to the Happy Lab, where we noodle on how to live a happier life. A friend of mine told me once that it is impossible to be depressed and upset about your life if you are grateful for things. Those two, being grateful and being upset about your life, are impossible to hold at the same time in your mind. I've never tried it, but I'm guessing it's true. And it reminded me of a quote that I saw recently from Sir John Templeton. So he is a rags to one of the most wealthiest and successful investors of the 20th century. And he was asked, hey, Sir John, what's the secret to all your wealth? And he said, the secret to wealth is gratitude. So I do find that when I'm getting a little depressed or upset about things or feeling like I'm being beat down by the man, I write a list of things that I'm grateful for, and it does help change the perspective. So the next time you find yourself in a funk, write down 10 things that you're grateful for.
On your marks, get set.
Hey, welcome to the Smart Sprint segment where we take a quick action step to creating a better retirement. Something you can do in the next 7 days. So today we're talking about risk. And in the next 7 days, I want you to write a sentence or two describing how you've chosen to deal with these 3 big risks to your retirement. Number 1, premature death. What happens to either you or your spouse if one of you dies early from a financial standpoint? Will they still have adequate resources to live a great retirement? How have you dealt with that? Number 2, how have you dealt with the potential of a long-term care event or a major medical expense later in life? We heard Lori talk about it. They've chosen not to, and to some degree. How have you chosen to deal with that? Are you choosing not to by not thinking about it? And third, how have you chosen to deal with market risk and the impact it could have if you lose a lot of money in the markets early in retirement? Just write a sentence or two on each one of those, and the answer could be, I've chosen not to think about it. But it may give you some clarity to start working towards protecting yourself against those 3 major risks to retirement. Want a free book for Christmas? Now, you may be aware, if you're a regular listener to the show, that my book, Rock Retirement, a simple guide to help you take control and be more optimistic about your future, is out. Well, it's out on Kindle. So the Kindle version is available now. You can Google it by going to Amazon and typing in Rock Retirement. And what I'm offering is, if you buy the Kindle version, leave an honest review of the book on Kindle or on Amazon, and send me a screenshot of it, I will send you a special pre-release edition of the hardcover, or it's a paperback, but the hard book, free. No shipping, no anything. Now, the actual book is not released until March of 2018, so you're going to have a special pre-release edition just by buying the Kindle version, leaving an honest review, and sending me an email showing me the review with your address. So here's a recent review I got from Jack. This is something worth reading, not just once, but several times. And Jack says, this is not a book for simple answers to complex problems, and he's not trying to sell you anything. Read the book and listen to the podcast. It will help you prioritize what you need to work on to make your retirement something that's a life well lived. Thanks, Jack. I'm glad you enjoyed the book. I also have gotten some feedback from DJ and others that, I may repeat a few concepts more than they had preferred. And then on some of the formatting for special parts of the text, it's a little off, and I'm working with my publisher on that. So I appreciate you guys pointing that out. So if you'd like a free pre-release signed edition, go to Kindle, buy the book, send me a copy of your Kindle review, your honest review, and I'll send you a free book.
We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of Retirement Answer Man. Be sure to visit rogerwhitney.com/answers to access the Retirement Answer Library with over 30 checklists to help you make the most of the only life you have. Remember, you have more power than you realize to create an amazing life starting today with Retirement Answer Man. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Have a wonderful day.